Have you ever woken up one morning and felt a quiet emptiness you couldn't quite name? Like the days have grown softer, but not always in a comforting way. More like a gentle fading of color, a blurring of purpose. Maybe you've given so much to others, raising children, holding families together, working year after year, that somewhere along the way you stopped tending to the small flame inside you. And now, you sometimes wonder, is this all there is? If you've ever sat in the stillness and felt a longing you can't explain, a wish to feel alive again, to remember who you were before the world called you by so many names, this time together is for you. Today I'd like to share 9 of the quietest, most hidden mistakes that can slowly steal your joy, your freedom, and the dignity you deserve in the later seasons of life. Not to shame you, not to frighten you, but to remind you that it's never too late to come home to yourself. So, find a comfortable place to sit, maybe make a warm cup of tea, and as you listen, I invite you to notice what stirs in your heart, because your story isn't over, not by a long stretch, and the most beautiful chapters may still be waiting to be written. Mistake 1. Believing passion dies with age. There is a story in the Buddhist tradition about a humble potter who, well into his 70s, decided to shape a new kind of clay vessel, one he had dreamed of creating since boyhood. His neighbors shook their heads and whispered, "Why does he bother? He's too old to begin again." But every dawn, while the sky was still tender with the colors of waking, he walked to the river, gathered the smoothest clay he could find, and returned to his wheel. His hands trembled sometimes, and the clay would collapse in on itself, as if mocking his ambition. Still, he would gather it again, pressing it into form with a quiet determination that seemed almost sacred. When the vessel was finally finished, a simple pot, unremarkable to those who passed by, it glowed in the sun as if it had been waiting for decades to be born. When asked why he persisted, the old potter smiled with the kind of softness that comes only from living a long time, and said, "Because the heart never stops longing to create, unless we convince it to stop." How many of us, listening here tonight, have slowly persuaded ourselves that our own longing no longer matters? That passion is a luxury reserved for the young, or for those with stronger backs, quicker minds, steadier hands. It is such an easy belief to adopt, because the world around us often stops inviting us into the dance. Friends move away, children grow busy, and even our own families, though well-meaning, may look at us as though our story has been shelved. We begin to tell ourselves that the book is closed, that curiosity, delight, and creativity belong to the past. Yet, in the Dharma, the Buddha reminds us, as long as breath remains, so too remains the possibility of awakening. I have sat with elders who once painted oceans in their spare time, and then let the brushes gather dust, because they felt too self-conscious to pick them up again. I have known a grandmother who secretly longed to learn to play the violin, but never dared, whispering to herself, "What would people think of me trying at this age?" And yet, when she finally gathered the courage to rent a worn instrument and begin, her eyes gleamed with a mischief that had been missing for years. She was not particularly skilled. Her bow sometimes shrieked against the strings, but each note stitched her more firmly to the present moment. Each note said, "I am still here." So I wonder gently, when did you last feel that familiar flicker inside you? A tiny surge of wanting that reminded you, you are still alive. Maybe it was a memory of dancing in your kitchen when no one was watching. Maybe it was a secret wish to plant a garden or write the stories of your life. Perhaps it was a curiosity about pottery or poetry or learning a language whose words taste unfamiliar on your tongue. What if that flicker isn't something to dismiss, but something to bow to? The Dharma teaches us, impermanence. Everything changes, yes, even our passions, but it does not mean they disappear. Rather, they transform. Perhaps you can no longer hike the tallest mountain, but you can still walk among the trees, noticing each leaf like a blessing. Perhaps you no longer have the same fire for grand adventure, but there is a quieter yearning, like the potter's, to bring forth something that feels true. So let me ask you softly, with no urgency and no judgment, what part of you is waiting to be invited back to life? What small act could you take, not for approval or applause, but simply for the joy of it? Because here is the truth that too many forget. Passion is not a candle that burns out with age. It is a lamp that only dims when we stop tending the flame. And if you have been telling yourself that your season of creativity has passed, perhaps tonight is the moment to challenge that story. What if the next chapter of your life holds a tenderness, a richness, a sense of discovery that you have never known before? What if, instead of shrinking, your spirit is ready to expand in ways that do not need permission from anyone but you? When we return to our passions, no matter how humble or imperfect, we return to ourselves. We step out of the shadow of other people's expectations and into the light of our own becoming. Take a breath, feel that possibility, and know that you are not too old to care, to try, to love what you love. Shall we continue to mistake 2? Mistake 2. Depending emotionally on your children. There is an old Zen parable about a woman whose son had grown into a respected merchant, busy with the cares of the world. She would sit by her window each evening, watching the road in case he might appear over the hill, carrying news, or simply a smile meant just for her. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, and though letters came, the visits did not. One day her neighbor asked why she spent so many hours waiting. The woman sighed, her gaze fixed on the empty road, and whispered, "Because when he comes, I feel real again. I have seen this quiet heartbreak up close. It isn't loud or dramatic. It doesn't often look like grief. Rather, it is a slow ache that hums beneath the surface of daily life, a longing to be seen, to be needed, to be remembered. When your children were small, you were their sun, their anchor, the center of their world. You cooked their meals, soothed their hurts, listened to their dreams when they could barely form words to name them. Over time, the shape of your love grew vast and selfless, filling every crack and corner of their becoming. And then, almost without warning, life rearranged itself. They grew up, took on their own burdens, became responsible for their own families. Of course you are proud. Of course you want them to thrive. But in the quiet hours, it is easy to feel that you have been gently set aside, like a precious photograph tucked in a drawer. I remember an older gentleman who came to a meditation group I once facilitated. His voice always carried the same brittle hope. My daughter promised she'd call me this weekend. The calls came less and less often, and each time he walked into the room with that same hollow look, you could almost hear the unspoken thought, "If they forget me, do I still matter?" In Buddhist teaching, there is the notion of upadana, grasping, clinging to what we believe will keep us safe or whole. And how naturally we do this with our children, as if our sense of purpose can only be secured by their validation. But dependence, even born of love, can become a prison. You start measuring your worth by the number of phone calls and feeling as though each unreturned message is proof that you have slipped into invisibility. What would happen if you turned just a little toward the parts of yourself that have nothing to do with being someone's parent? Who were you before they called you mom or dad? Who are you now, beyond the titles, beyond the stories you have carried for them? I knew a grandmother who began volunteering at a local library after years spent waiting by the phone. She said, At first I thought I was only filling time, but slowly I started feeling like someone again. Not because of my children, but because of me. There was a lightness in her that had not been there before, a kind of quiet dignity that no one else needed to bestow. It isn't betrayal to build a life that is not centered entirely around your children's attention. In fact, it is an act of compassion, both for yourself and for them. When you cultivate friendships, passions, and a rhythm of self-nourishment, you release your children from the burden of being your only source of belonging. You give them space to love you freely, rather than out of duty or guilt. So let me ask you gently, as if we were sitting across from one another, sharing a warm cup of tea. When was the last time you did something simply because it made you feel whole? Not because it was expected, or because it might earn you a phone call, but because it honored the luminous being you still are. You are more than the sum of the roles you have played. You are more than the waiting. In the Dharma, we are reminded that attachment is suffering, and that freedom begins with the willingness to release our grasp. This does not mean you stop loving your children. It means you stop defining yourself by how much they return that love in the ways you expect. What if you could trust that your value does not diminish just because their visits grow fewer? What if you could remember that you are still worthy of attention, of tenderness, of joy, whether or not they remember to call? May you find the courage to turn toward yourself, to rediscover the friendships and interests that were always yours to claim. For in that returning you may realize that you were never forgotten by the one person whose remembrance matters most. When you are ready, we can gently move to mistake 3. Mistake 3. Neglecting the body, because it's too late anyway. There is a quiet moment I remember from the life of a revered monk who spent many years tending a humble vegetable garden beside his monastery. His robes were faded, his back slightly bent, but each morning he would rise before dawn to pull weeds and water seedlings. One day, a novice asked him why he cared so much for this patch of earth, given that his body was already old and frail. The monk paused, brushed the soil from his palms, and said, "Because when I care for this garden, I am really caring for the garden within me." I have often thought about this simple truth when I've sat with elders who have quietly stopped tending the garden of their own bodies. It happens almost without notice. One day, you decide it isn't worth the trouble to cook a nourishing meal, so you skip dinner or reach for something quick and flavorless. Another day, you tell yourself your legs ache too much to walk, so you sit a little longer in the same chair. Slowly, these small concessions become a pattern, and before long, you begin to believe the softest and most dangerous lie of all. It doesn't matter anymore. I remember meeting a woman named Clara, who used to love strolling through the park, feeling the grass cool beneath her bare feet. But after she turned 78, she started saying, "My joints just don't work like they used to," and she stopped going out altogether. She thought she was simply surrendering to her age, accepting her limitations with grace. But over time, I watched the brightness in her eyes dim, as though the world had folded in around her. She no longer noticed the sunrise, the sweetness of a ripe peach, or the quiet strength that comes from standing tall, even for a moment. In Buddhism, there is a teaching called Kayagata Sati, mindfulness of the body. It is the understanding that our body is not separate from our mind or spirit, that how we care for it shapes the way we meet each moment. When we neglect it, the body slowly forgets how to trust us, and in turn, our spirit begins to believe it is no longer worthy of presence. What would it look like to honor your body as the precious vessel it still is, even with its aches and limitations? What would it feel like to touch your own skin with kindness, to offer yourself the same patience you once gave to your children when they were small and unsteady on their feet? I have known elders who began with the simplest of gestures, a few minutes of gentle stretching before breakfast, a glass of water sipped with intention, a slow walk around the block while noticing the shape of every tree along the way. These modest acts are not about becoming young again. They are about remembering that you are still here, still capable of caring for yourself, still deserving of feeling awake in your own skin. One man I met began practicing Tai Chi in his living room after his wife passed. At first he felt foolish, his arms waving in slow, uncertain circles. But over time, those movements became a kind of prayer, a way of thanking his body for carrying him through a life of hardship and wonder. He once told me, with tears shining in his eyes, "I thought I had to choose between dignity and aging, but I see now they can walk hand in hand." So let me ask you, softly and without judgment, when did you last thank your body for the ways it still shows up for you? For the breath that keeps moving in and out, for the feet that carry you from room to room, for the heart that beats without being asked. If there is any small part of you that has whispered, "It's too late," I invite you to consider this. The Buddha taught that every moment is a chance to begin again. Even if you have spent years neglecting your body, this moment, this very breath, can be the start of a gentler, more loving story. You don't have to run marathons or transform overnight. You only have to decide that you are worth caring for, that your body deserves attention, not because it is perfect, but because it is yours. And when you choose to nourish yourself, you may discover that the spirit you feared had faded is still waiting, patient and luminous, ready to guide you back to your own wholeness. If you are ready, we can move gently to mistake 4. Mistake 4, hoarding money, but starving life. Long ago, in a small monastery tucked among cedar trees, there lived a learned monk who spent decades copying ancient scriptures by hand. Every day he saved the coins he received in offering bowls, tucking them away in a clay jar beneath his sleeping mat. He told himself it was wise. What if illness came, or drought, or thieves? The jar grew heavier each season, and so did his heart. One evening, a novice asked him, "Master, why do you never taste the sweet cakes the villagers bring, or walk in the garden at dawn?" The old monk looked away and murmured, "Because I must be prepared." But when he passed on, the novices discovered the jar, overflowing with coins he had never spent, and beside it, a note written in his own careful script, "I forgot that preparation is not the same as living." I think of that story often when I sit with elders whose hands clench a little tighter around their savings as the years pass. Of course, it is natural, perhaps even sensible, to be cautious. You have worked hard, sacrificed much, endured the lean seasons to build a small measure of safety. In a world that can turn upside down without warning, it feels comforting to guard every penny, to tell yourself you will never be caught unprepared. But there is a fine, almost invisible line between prudence and fear. You cross it when you begin to deny yourself the very comforts that could bring meaning to your days. You cross it when you stop buying fresh flowers because they wilt too fast, or you refuse a gentle trip to see old friends because gas costs too much, or you let yourself sit in the same tattered chair because there's no sense replacing it now. Each small denial seems reasonable in the moment, but over time they become a habit of deprivation, a way of shrinking your world until all that remains is the illusion of control. I once knew a widower named Gerald who had saved nearly every dollar he earned. He lived in a modest apartment, surrounded by yellowed curtains and chipped plates, though he could easily have afforded more comfort. When I asked him what he dreamed of, he looked almost startled. as though the question itself was a luxury. After a long silence, he whispered, "I've always wanted to see the ocean." Yet year after year, he told himself it wasn't practical, that he could not justify the expense. The ocean, he reasoned, would have to wait. One spring, after a health scare that shook him awake, Gerald finally agreed to let his daughter drive him to the coast. I still remember the way he stood on the shore, his hair lifted by salt wind, tears sliding down his cheeks as he whispered, "I can't believe I waited so long." It wasn't the ocean that moved him most, but the realization that he had been hoarding the possibility of beauty as if it were an indulgence he didn't deserve. In Buddhism, there is a teaching about the middle way, a path that avoids both excess and deprivation. We are not called to squander what we have, nor to starve ourselves of all joy. We are invited to be wise but not fearful, to remember that life is precious and that every moment we postpone our own contentment is a moment we cannot reclaim. So let me ask you, softly and without any accusation, are you living like a guest in your own life, waiting for some imagined emergency that may never come? Are you so busy guarding your treasure that you have forgotten the treasures already here? Warm bread shared with friends, a small kindness to yourself, a morning spent doing something that feels nourishing simply because it matters to you. What if, just for today, you gave yourself permission to taste a little sweetness, to buy the fresh pastry, to light the good candle, to hire the neighbor boy to help tend the garden so your back can rest? What if you stopped measuring your worth by how little you spend and started measuring it by how fully you allow yourself to be alive? There is no virtue in leaving this world with a bank account full of numbers if your heart is impoverished by regret. The Buddha taught, let go, and you will see the abundance that has always been yours. Maybe that abundance is not only in your savings, but in the small, tender pleasures you have been postponing. When you are ready, we can step softly into mistake 5 together. Mistake 5. Thinking it's too late to start over. There is a tale, often told among Buddhist teachers, about an old woman who lived at the edge of a dense bamboo forest. All her life she had dreamed of weaving baskets, delicate, intricate designs that could hold rice or flowers or small gifts for neighbors. But every year she would watch the seasons pass, whispering to herself, "I'm too old now." That was for a younger version of me, so she kept her hands folded in her lap, her dreams tucked away in the quiet corners of her heart. One winter, when her bones were more brittle and her hair had turned the color of frost, she finally decided she could no longer bear the regret. She asked the village weaver to teach her the first steps, how to strip the bamboo, how to soak it until it bent in her hands. The other villagers chuckled behind her back. "What is the point?" they asked. "She will never be any good at it." But the woman only smiled. "I am not weaving baskets to prove anything," she said softly. "I am weaving them to remind myself that my life is still unfolding." I have seen this same quiet courage in the eyes of many elders. Perhaps you have felt it too, a flicker of curiosity that stirs beneath the familiar routines, a restless whisper that says, "What if I tried?" But then, almost as quickly, comes the old weary voice that replies, "What's the use? My time has passed." In the Dharma, the Buddha teaches that beginner's mind, the willingness to approach each moment without clinging to the past, is the heart of liberation. Yet somewhere along the path, we are taught that reinvention belongs only to the young, that starting over is an indulgence reserved for those with unlined faces and years stretching out ahead of them. So we stay where we are, not because it nourishes us, but because the thought of change feels heavier than our longing for something new. I once met a man named Arthur who had spent decades working in the same machine shop. After he retired, he told himself he was content to sit in his recliner and watch the hours slip by. But deep down, he felt an ache he couldn't name, a sense that he had left part of himself unexplored. One day, on a whim, he signed up for a watercolor class at the community center. He was nearly 80. His hands weren't steady. The first time he picked up the brush, the colors bled together in muddy streaks. But he came back the next week, and the week after. Months later, he showed me a small painting, shades of blue and green, a pond with lilies floating on its surface. His eyes shone as he said, "It isn't perfect, but when I paint, I feel like I've started living again." What if the same possibility exists for you? What if the gate to a new beginning stands open, quietly waiting for you to notice? Maybe you don't dream of painting or weaving, but perhaps there is some part of your spirit that longs to be expressed. Learning a language you once loved, moving to a smaller place that feels lighter on your heart, reconnecting with an old friend, or simply daring to believe that more joy is still possible. Let me ask you gently, as if we were walking side by side down a quiet path. When was the last time you allowed yourself to imagine a different kind of life? One not dictated by habit or fear, but by a tender recognition of what you still yearn for. The Buddha often spoke of impermanence not as something to dread, but as a gift, proof that no state, no story, no sorrow is final. As long as you draw breath, you are becoming. As long as your heart continues its steady rhythm, you have the chance to begin again. Perhaps you have told yourself it's too late. But consider this, the old woman in the bamboo forest did not become a master weaver. She didn't have to. She only needed to remember that her hands could still learn, that her spirit could still be stirred by the humble act of trying. So I wonder, dear friend, what is one small step you could take, not tomorrow or someday, but today, to honor the part of you that refuses to stop growing? If you feel ready, we can turn softly toward Mistake 6 and explore it together. Mistake 6. Living on autopilot and withdrawing from life. There is a Buddhist parable about a monk who once traveled hundreds of miles to seek counsel from a revered teacher. When he arrived, weary and covered in the red dust of the road, he was offered a bowl of steaming rice and a place to sit beneath a flowering tree. The teacher did not begin with philosophy or lofty words. Instead, she asked him, "Tell me, when was the last time you truly tasted your meal, felt the breeze on your cheek, noticed the way the petals fall?" The monk was silent for a long time because he realized he could not remember. In his quest to find wisdom, he had stopped paying attention to life itself. I often think of this story when I speak to elders who find themselves drifting through their days, like shadows behind glass. At first it seems harmless, even comforting, to settle into familiar routines. You wake up at the same hour, pour your coffee into the same chipped mug, watch the same morning news, and sit in the same chair as daylight moves across the floor. This sameness becomes a kind of lullaby, wrapping you in a sense of safety. But over time, it can also become a subtle form of forgetting, a way of numbing the ache of longing for something more. I remember meeting Eleanor, a woman of quiet grace, who confessed to me, "Sometimes I go entire weeks without speaking to another person." Her voice cracked when she said it, as if admitting it made it more real. She wasn't lonely in the dramatic way people imagine. She was simply absent from herself. Her life had narrowed to a corridor of repetition. Meals alone, television humming in the background, nights spent wondering where the years had gone. When she described her days, it was as though she were reading from a list, rather than living a story. The Buddha spoke of sati, mindfulness, not as an obligation, but as an invitation to return to the immediacy of your own experience. To remember that each breath, each cup of tea, each sunrise is a chance to feel alive. And yet, how easily we trade that aliveness for the comfort of autopilot. We tell ourselves we are too tired to try new things, too old to be surprised. So we withdraw, little by little, until we forget what it feels like to participate in our own existence. Let me ask you gently, when was the last time you did something that made you feel a tiny spark of wonder? Not something grand or showy, but something that broke the monotony, a different path on your morning walk, a new recipe, a conversation with a stranger in the grocery line. Even the smallest gestures can be enough to wake us from the trance of routine. I knew a man named Thomas, who after losing his wife, spent 2 years living inside the same loop of sorrow and habit. One day, his granddaughter brought him a simple gift, a bird feeder. He set it up outside his kitchen window, more out of obligation than enthusiasm. But slowly, as the birds came, flashes of blue and red against the bare winter branches, he began to notice he was looking forward to mornings again. He started writing down the names of each visitor, feeling a small flicker of purpose returning. In time, he said, those birds saved me. They reminded me that life is always moving, even when I feel stuck. You don't have to change everything overnight. You don't have to become someone new, but you can begin by choosing one moment each day to show up fully, to lift your gaze, to taste your food, to let curiosity guide you beyond the edges of habit. The Buddha taught that we suffer not only because of pain, but because of our refusal to be present with what is here. So if you feel your life has become a blur, I invite you to consider, what would it feel like to turn gently toward yourself, to reclaim the wonder that still lives beneath the layers of routine? What if today, just today, you allowed yourself to be surprised by something, even if it is nothing more than the way sunlight pools on the kitchen counter or the softness of your own breathing? When you are ready, we can walk together into Mistake 7 and see what it holds for us. Mistake 7. Clinging to draining relationships. There is a story from the Buddha's time about a kind farmer who kept a field of rice that fed his family and neighbors for many years. But one season he noticed weeds creeping in, slowly at first, then in thick, choking clusters. His friends urged him to clear the field, but the farmer hesitated. "These weeds have been here so long," he said. "They feel like part of the land now." But as the weeds grew, the rice withered, and soon what once nourished many became barren ground. When the farmer finally cleared the field, he wept, not from the labor but from the sorrow of waiting so long to do what he knew was needed. I think of that farmer when I listen to elders speak of relationships that leave them weary, friendships that feel more like obligation than joy, family connections maintained out of habit or fear, conversations that end in criticism, not comfort. Perhaps you too have felt the sting of being with someone who drains your spirit, yet you stay because the history runs deep. Because the thought of letting go feels lonelier than enduring the weight of what no longer serves you. I once knew a woman named Ruth who visited the same friend every week, as she had done for decades. But each visit left her deflated, small, as if she had to fold parts of herself away to fit the space between them. When I asked her gently why she continued, she said, "We've been friends since we were girls. I'd feel disloyal to stop." But then she paused, tears welling in her eyes, and added, "But I always come home sad. I don't feel seen anymore." The Buddha taught that right relationship is part of the path to liberation. Kalya Shamita, spiritual friendship, is meant to uplift, to help us grow, to reflect back our best and truest selves. Yet how often do we hold fast to connections that do the opposite, simply because we fear the empty space their absence would leave? Let me ask you gently, what is the cost of keeping relationships that shrink you? What might bloom in your heart if you made space for peace instead of history? Choosing to step back from what harms you is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of clarity, of self-respect, of kindness to the soul that has carried you this far. It does not mean you stop loving. It means you stop sacrificing your well-being at the altar of old loyalties. I knew an elder who, after decades of tolerating a relative's sharp tongue, finally chose to spend holidays with neighbors who brought laughter instead of tension. It felt strange at first, she admitted, but I realized I was no longer waiting for love. I was stepping into it. This is not to say that every difficult relationship must end. Sometimes, with honest words and open hearts, healing can happen, but that requires willingness on both sides. And if that willingness isn't there, it is not failure to say, softly but firmly, enough. The Buddha reminds us that our energy is precious, that we are not here to carry the burdens others refuse to set down. You are allowed to choose connections that feel like sunlight, like fresh air, like coming home to yourself. So I invite you to consider, what might it feel like to release even one relationship that no longer aligns with who you are becoming? What new friendships, what gentle solitude, what inner freedom might take root in the space you create? When you feel ready, we can move quietly into Mistake 8 and explore that landscape together. Mistake 8, abandoning your spiritual life. There is a quiet story told among monks about a man who in his youth lit a small oil lamp each evening and placed it before a statue of the Buddha. No matter how long his days had been, he never forgot this simple ritual. He said it reminded him that even in darkness, there was always a place within him that could be illumined. As the man grew older, life became heavier. His wife passed, his children moved far away, his body grew tired and forgetful. Little by little, the habit slipped away. One night, he looked around his dim room and realized he hadn't lit the lamp in years. The darkness felt deeper than he remembered. It was not just the absence of light, but the absence of something sacred he had once trusted to guide him home to himself. I have met many elders who carry a similar hush in their hearts, a silence where faith, wonder, or spiritual connection used to live. It doesn't always vanish with a loud declaration. More often, it recedes in small, unnoticed steps. Perhaps you once sat in church pews, or bowed on a meditation cushion, or walked among the trees whispering your hopes to the wind. And then one day you stopped, because life got hard, because grief eclipsed your sense of belonging, because you convinced yourself you didn't have time, or that maybe, after all you had suffered, it no longer mattered. But the Buddha taught that the spiritual life is not something apart from the ordinary. It is not a special hour set aside only when we feel worthy or pure. It is the very thread woven through each moment, the way you lift your cup of tea, the way you watch the clouds drift, the way you touch your own sorrow with compassion rather than disdain. I remember a man named Peter who told me he used to sit by the river every Sunday, simply listening to the water. He called it his prayer without words. But after his wife died, he stopped going. He said it felt hollow, like he was only sitting beside the ache of her absence. Years passed. One afternoon, he decided to return. He sat on the same worn bench and closed his eyes. He felt the breeze on his cheek, the sun warming his thinning hair, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something loosen inside, a quiet recognition that though she was gone, he was still here, still breathing, still capable of feeling wonder. I wonder, softly, what that might look like in your own life. What small gesture could you offer yourself as an act of remembrance? Lighting a candle before dawn, whispering a simple gratitude before sleep, reading a verse of poetry that stirs your spirit, or sitting in silence for no other reason than to be with yourself. When we abandon our spiritual life, we begin to believe we are only the sum of our worries and losses. But in the Dharma, we are reminded that beneath all the sorrow and distraction, there remains an unbroken place, a deep, clear pool of awareness that has never aged, never grown cynical, never been harmed. Returning to that place does not require dogma or perfection. It only asks for your presence. So let me ask you, when did you last pause to feel your own breath, to rest your hand over your heart, and remember that you are more than your name, your history, your pain? What would it mean to reclaim even the smallest ritual that brings you closer to whatever you call sacred? Perhaps you have told yourself it's too late to begin again, but here is what I have learned, sitting beside many people in their last seasons of life. The soul never stops longing to come home. No matter how many years you have wandered, the way back is always here, waiting in the quiet space of your own awareness. When you are ready, we can gently turn to Mistake 9 together. Mistake 9. Believing there's nothing left to discover. There is a story from the Zen tradition about a monk who, after many decades of study and meditation, believed he had seen all there was to see. He knew every teaching by heart, every chant and ritual, and he began to feel certain that the great mystery of life had passed him by. One afternoon, while sweeping the temple steps, he paused to watch a dragonfly land on the tip of his broom. Its wings shimmered in the late sun, a kaleidoscope of light that seemed to breathe. In that instant, he felt something stir, something so fresh and unexpected it brought tears to his eyes. Later, he would say that dragonfly taught him more about wonder than any scripture ever had. I think of that monk whenever I meet elders who quietly carry the belief that all the surprises of life belong to the young. That discovery is something you outgrow, like childhood shoes or the taste for sweet things. It is such a gentle resignation that you may not even notice it creeping in the way your eyes glaze over when the days start to look the same. The way you tell yourself you have already learned all the lessons life had to offer. But in the Dharma, the Buddha taught that anicca, impermanence, means not only that all things fade, but that all things can be renewed, that each moment, no matter how ordinary, holds the possibility of a different perspective, a hidden doorway into awe. I remember a woman named Helen who once told me, "I feel like I've become invisible to my own life." She had lived in the same house for 40 years. She ate the same breakfast, watched the same programs, folded her laundry the same way. She loved her routines, but over time they began to feel like walls instead of windows. When I asked her what she missed, she said softly, "I miss feeling curious." So together, we made a simple experiment. One afternoon, we took her out to the botanical garden she had not visited since her husband was alive. I watched her face as she leaned over a blossom she could not name, inhaling its scent as though it were the first flower she'd ever known. Tears filled her eyes, and she whispered, "I forgot that I could still be surprised." Let me ask you, gently, when was the last time something made you pause, not out of habit or duty, but because it made your heart lift in that quiet way wonder does? What if you allowed yourself to believe that new discoveries are not reserved for the young or the unscarred? What if the deepest revelations only arrive after a lifetime of looking? The Buddha reminded us that wisdom is not a destination you reach by collecting enough experiences. Wisdom is the willingness to keep meeting each day, as if you've never seen it before. To walk the same path to your mailbox and notice, perhaps for the first time, the delicate spider web glistening between the hedges. To sit down to your morning tea and really taste its warmth. To listen, truly listen to the stories of a neighbor you thought you already knew. I once knew an elderly gentleman who, at 84, began studying the stars. He would sit outside with a small telescope, tracking the slow arc of the constellations. When I asked him why he'd taken up this new hobby, he laughed softly and said, "Because the sky makes me feel small in the best way, like there is always more to learn." What would it mean to let yourself feel small in that way again? Not diminished, but humbled by how much beauty is still waiting for you. What would it feel like to wake up tomorrow and say to yourself, "I have not yet seen everything this life can show me"? Perhaps this is the secret, that discovery is not a matter of doing grand things, but of opening your heart to the small ones you have overlooked. Even the breath moving in and out of your body, unnoticed for decades, can become a miracle when you remember to pay attention. As we come to the close of these reflections, I invite you to sit quietly for a moment and ask yourself, what is left for me to discover? Not out there in the wide world alone, but here, within my own heart, in the soft, unclaimed spaces of my own days. If you feel ready, I would be honored to help you weave these insights into a closing reflection, or to create whatever else you need. Just let me know. Perhaps, dear friend, as you listen to these stories, you felt a stirring somewhere quiet inside you, a tender reminder that your life is not a finished tale pressed between the pages of memory, but a living, breathing story still unfolding. You have known seasons of loss and triumph. You have weathered the sharp winds of disappointment, and you have tasted moments of unspoken grace. And yet, here you are, still becoming, still capable of choosing what these next chapters will feel like. The Buddha taught that no moment is too late for awakening. No heart is too weary to remember its own light. You do not need to reinvent everything at once. You do not need to prove your worth by grand gestures. You need only to take one honest step, however small, toward the life that still calls you. So as you rise tomorrow, perhaps you will place a hand over your heart and ask gently, what is waiting for me to notice? What have I been postponing that might bring me home to myself? May you remember that you are not here merely to endure the passing of time. You are here to feel, to wonder, to heal, to love, again and again, until your final breath. And in that remembering, may you find the quiet courage to stop surviving and start living, fully and without apology. For as long as this precious life allows, you are not alone. You never have been. And it is never, ever too late to begin again.